Greetings hobbyists, this is All, and in this tutorial we're going to make a sci-fi armored gauntlet like you'd find on a Space Marine. So let's get straight into this. I'm going to delete out this cube, and the first thing I want is a background reference to help me get the scaling right. So I'm going to go into my y-axis view, so side view, I'm going to press Shift and A, and I'm going to bring in an image as a background. And then I just need to find my file, which has got this stupid name because I just downloaded it from the internet. And we've got our hand. Now it's very unlikely that we're going to end up with a hand in this shape, but it's just to get the proportions right so that it looks approximately correct. Now at this point I'm not going to scale that. I'm going to press Shift and A, and I'm going to bring in a cylinder, and I'm going to up my vertices to somewhere in the region of 128, just so it's nice and smooth. That's probably a bit excessive, but as long as the computer can handle it, that's fine. And then I'm going to press N and bring out my item information so I can get this sized appropriately. And I've got all my sizes here, although they don't have units, this is the equivalent of millimeters. And now I'm going to size this so that the Z is 1 millimeter in size, and then everything else is 3.5 and 3.5. So I've done that before worrying about this image too much, because now I can move this image up and then I can scale this as appropriate to make it the right size for this joint. I can also, if I need to, rotate this round a little bit so it looks like it's approximately in the right position. But as I say, this image here is just there to give a basic idea of what we're doing. So I'm going to start with the armor panels now, and it's probably easiest to start with the main one that protects the hand. So I'm going to press Shift and A, bring in a cube, and let's bring that up, and let's start scaling this up and reshaping it. So we want something about there, and then I'm going to go into vertex mode, Shift and Z. All I'm going to do is grab those G and X. You'll notice I'm going to try and keep this relatively flat, somewhere like there. G and X, so it expands out a little bit. Let's do this one, G and X, somewhere around there. And then this one I want to curve back a bit, but I want to make a curved shape. So I'm going to Control and R to bring in some edge loops. Somewhere around that probably is going to be fine. And then escape. Then I'm going to grab this vertex, turn on my proportional editing, and I can G to bring this down, and I can scale this up. Oh, that's going in the wrong direction. Let's change that to sharp. G, and then there we go. And I can use my mouse wheel to change the size of that circle, which will do how much this is going to affect. So I think I'm going for something about there. And I might actually G and bring this one down slightly as well, just to give it a slightly nicer curved shape. So back into object mode, Shift and Z, and we're going to deal with the thickness of this, so just S and Y, and let's bring that to somewhere that's about there, and I'm going to G and Y move that so it's approximately equal with the side of this shape. So we're starting to get there. Now this does look a little bit too squared off, so we're going to fix this a little bit. Now there's a couple of options here. I could use a subdivision surface, but let's work out the bits that I want to move around first. So what I'm going to do is I want these vertices moved out, or effectively this face moved out to make it a little bit rounded, but I don't want to do this to the vertices on this side. So I'm going to go into X-ray mode, vertex mode, select these, press H. Now that means that any of my proportional editing won't affect this, and let's select those, go into top-down view, G and Y, and I can affect how that's going to be shaped. Oh, let's change that back to being smooth. G and Y, and something around there. So not too much, but something that's going to be a little bit more rounded and give a little bit more of an interesting shape. We could exaggerate this as much as I want. Now some quick notes. If you go back into object mode, you'll see the rest of the object is there, and you'll notice that this bit is flat. It's the area that we'd had hidden. But if we go back into vertex mode, it hides everything again. To unhide, we just press Alt and H, and that gives everything, or makes everything a little bit easier to see. And I'm going to fiddle around with some of these edges to make them a little bit more rounded. So let's go into edge mode. Let's select that one, that one, that one, and that one. And I'm going to Control and B, and just move my mouse wheel up to add a few more there. I'm going to get to about 8, just because it's a nice round number for doing certain things with. And then I'm going to do the same thing for everything along this edge. So I'm going to Alt select and just use Control to carry on going around and select everything and then Control and B there. And you'll notice this is creating a bit of a mess, and it's not equally applying this bevel. That's because we've not applied the scale. So I'm going to go to Object, Control and A, Scale. This wasn't really a problem. So again, let's select those and Control and B. We're probably going to have a problem somewhere. Yeah, just here, where we've got all these going on and merging together. I'm going to go into vertex mode. We are going to use machine tools in this, so I'm going to just grab those, click 1, and then Shift and 1, and Shift and 1, and Shift and 1 to merge at center. And then let's have a look up here. If you don't have machine tools, you can just do this by selecting them. Oh, should go into X-ray mode to make sure they're selected, and press M at center, but much quicker with machine tools. Shift and 1, Shift and 1, and we've got that sorted. So a bit of a better shape now, looking more rounded. We could do some more here on these edges and bevel them if we wanted to. So if you decide you do that, just there we go. So Control and B, and we probably don't need as many there, but that will just make that a little bit more smooth. So up to you if you want to do that. Depends on what size you're probably going to be printing this. So let's go back to our reference image and let's start working on some fingers. So again, we're going to start with a cube. I'm going to G to bring that up. I'm actually going to start with this middle finger here because it's relatively straight, and scale that down, and then I'm going to S and Z, and somewhere about there is going to look right. Now you're going to need to make some decisions here. Actually, I think this might be a little bit too wide, so I'm just going to select all those faces, G and Y. Oops, let's turn off proportional editing. G and Y, and bring that back a little bit. I can always change that later, but you need to make some decisions here on how much of an overlap you want. Do you want to see the joints? And in this instance, for now, I'm just going to S and Z, make that a little bit wider, just so we're not going to see the joints too much, maybe even a little bit more than that. Just so we've got some overlap, and then we're going to work on this shape. Now, first thing to do is this back end is probably going to want to be more rounded. It's going to make it easier to make the different parts go together. So I'm going to go to edge mode. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to Control and A and apply the scale first, then go to edge mode, select those edges, Control and B, and let's just do something like that. And then importantly, I want my pivot point to be between here, and my pivot point is going to be based on my origin. So I'm just going to select those, gone into X-ray mode, so I've selected everything, and then I'm just going to press, using machine tools, Shift and S, and I want my origin to the vertices. And if we go here, you can see that's done that. So that was using machine tools. If you don't have machine tools, do get it. I'm just going to go to Edit and Preferences and show where you can put this on. So Machine, and you need to make sure that it is this one, the cursor and origin manipulation pie. It doesn't automatically come on, so you need to select that. So do make sure that's selected. Machine tools is free if you go to Gumroad, though it's a really nice thing to add a little bit of money when you buy it, so that the people that have created this get something for their hard work. And I'm going to select those, G and Z, let's move those back a little bit. And then I'm just going to round everything out by going to edge mode. Let's select those with Alt and Shift and Alt those. And then in fact, let's do this one and this one first. So Control and B, and somewhere like that, and then there, Control and B, and we're just going to do a smaller one there. Or you could do a large one, it depends what you want. I'm just going to be a bit lazy and make sure that it doesn't affect or cause any overlaps there. So we've got my approximate finger shape, or a single finger joint. Then it's just a matter of Shift and D, bring that up a little bit, S and Z, to scale that into Z, S and X to make sure it's a little bit narrower, and then Shift and D, and I've got the same thing here, S and X, a little bit smaller, something like that. So we've got our finger. And what's good about this is now, as long as I've got this set to being in the active element, what I can do is I can select all those, and then R, select those, R, select that one, R. Notice I'm in side view here, and we can manipulate our fingers. Just going to undo that. Now I would say I think I want this a little bit more extreme, so I'm actually going to bring those a little bit in, and then that one a little bit in more. So we've got our fingers. Now, there are other things we could do with this. I've avoided using lots of add-ons. We could have actually made these bevels in different ways, but that would be using, well, we could do this with vanilla, but it would take a long time. With hard ops, it would be much easier, but we're just gonna stick with this for now, assuming that most of our fingers are gonna be seen closed anyway. And I'm just gonna select these, Shift and D, got this finger there. And notice, because we've got this on the active element being the thing that we're focusing on, I can press S and it will scale it together, whereas if I had this on the individual origins and press S, it would cause us a problem. So we want that to the active element, and generally with the last thing being selected being the one closest to the hand. So I can press S, make that a little bit smaller, Shift and D, S, smaller again, just sort of approximating this. Can R as well to bring that around a little bit if we wanted to, and then again making sure the one closest to the hand is back, R there, and then same thing again, Shift and D, R, and then I can just fiddle around with the positioning. This one probably wants to come down a little bit, so that's G to there, and this one probably needs to come in a little bit, G to there. So we've got our hand, or our gauntlet. It's beginning to take shape. This needs to definitely come further back to somewhere around there. I'm trying to get a little bit of overlap just so everything's nice and solid when I 3D print it. Again, this might be too thick. We'll deal with that later, but we've got that as the basis of our hand and our gauntlet. And I know it looks a bit extreme because everything's straight, but we can fix this in a second. Come and have a look at it from this angle. It's starting to look about right. Then finally, we need to get our thumb. Now, our thumb just has 2 joints to it, so I'm just going to select those 2, Shift and D, bring it around here, rotate it, G, and let's scale that up so it's about the right size. Now, this thumb is going to be a bit of a pain, mostly because of the way that it joins onto the hand. Most of the time for a glove, we're going to have this so that it's gripping something. So I'm actually going to sort that out now. Probably looks a little bit big, so I'm going to G, SY, I'm just going to type -1, so it's now facing the other way, and I can rotate this round from here, so R, something like that, and so on. So we can just fiddle around with this until we've got this in approximately the right place. Something like there for now. We're going to deal with this thumb a lot later. Now, the bit that's going to bring this all together is going to be the section that comes in here. The part that's going to be effectively the soft or the rubberized bit of the armor. I'm going to create this using an array, and then we're going to manipulate that array. Now, for now, I'm just going to, because sometimes it brings a line up here, I'm just going to press H to hide that reference image. So Shift A, I want to bring in a cylinder. 128 is fine. S and Z to make it smaller on the Z axis. Let's bring it up a little bit, and then let's fix this shape. So we're going to have it a little bit wider on the X direction, so S and X, something like there. And we might need to move the hand around itself to be a little bit more in line with everything, because at the moment we want to keep it relatively in line with this, the connecting part, the solid part that joins to the armor. G and X that along a little bit, and we'll see how this goes. In fact, I'm going to G and Z that, so there's a slightly bit more of a gap so we can see this. S and Z, scale that down a little bit on the Z axis because we want these ridges of the soft armor, the bit that flexes, to be a little bit smaller. And importantly, it is going to intersect with our back armored part, which is going to be really important just for when we boolean everything together. Control and A, apply the scale, go to edge mode. I'm going to alt select that edge there, shift and alt that edge there, control and B. We don't need too much here. I'm going to go for something like 3 or 4, just so that we can clearly see that it's curved, maybe something like that. And then I'm going to go into face mode, grab that face, shift select that face. So if you've got hard ops, you can press Q, and then for in macro hold Alt, and we can just bring that out a bit. If you don't have that, it's just coming down to here and then choose extrude along normals and then move it out a little bit. And that's just to give some definition between the different ridges. Now, importantly, I'm also then going to delete these faces so that we've got the inside being exposed. That's going to be really important when we get to our array, just for making a 3D printable object. Otherwise, we're going to have to do more cleanup. So let's have a look at that. G and Z that down so it's somewhere around there. And then let's array this. So over here to our modifier properties, add modifier array. We don't want it on the x-axis, so turn that to 0. We want this on the z-axis, turn that up to 1. And let's have a look at how many we're going to need. So we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, somewhere around there. Now, this is not looking great at this point. In fact, I don't quite like how wide these are. I'm actually going to press S and Z and really shrink that down. So we've got something more like that. That looks better. That's a bit more the scale we want. Otherwise, it just wouldn't flex very much. Maybe a little bit more. Something like that. Let's G and Z that down to about there. And we're just going to have to up our count. That's better. Maybe about there. So we've got this and it's looking all right, but it doesn't look like, or it doesn't feel like we could fit a hand in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in a modifier to be able to affect this. Because at the moment, if we wanted to affect anything, we'd have to apply this and then we can't change anything about it. And one thing I should do is make sure you've got the merge option selected there. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting some time later. And what that's going to do is where we've got this overlap here, they're going to merge those vertices together so it becomes one solid object. So I'm going to use hard lots for this. I have got a video, there's a link in the top right hand corner for how to do this without using hard ops, but I'm just going to press Q, go to add modifier, and I want a lattice, and then I can just press Q and up by Z. So let's up that to something like there, and then we're going to want to affect probably all the other angles. So Q, actually let's just fix that one first. So we've got these, then we want some Q and we want some on the X. So let's add those in there. Probably not too many there. We're not going to fiddle around with this too much, but maybe about there. And then let's start fiddling around with this. We'll deal with this bit later, just so I can show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to go into edit mode. And now what I can do is I can grab those vertices, G and Z, and I can start making that fit the shape. And if you'll notice it seems to be exaggerating this one too much, what you can do is you can just bring up your proportional editing, G and Z, and you'll notice it now brings everything with it. But importantly, and this is the real key bit here, it's allowing me, or the lattice allows me to affect this array, but we've still, if I come here, got the array working. I can still, if I want to, change the amount that we've got going on, so I can still modify everything. So lattice modifiers are fantastic. Now let's deal with the thickness here. I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm just going to grab these. In fact, let's deal most of the ones that are going to be on the palm. So somewhere around there, might go further. G, and I can bring that in, and I can scroll my wheel up and down to affect how much we're affecting. Something like that. And then I'm going to grab those and bring that in further and just shrink what I'm affecting. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. So now we've got something that's getting a bit better on having a hand shape. Okay, it's a little bit more rounded where you'd have the palm and then it goes into the fingers. And if I need to affect these, in fact I think I do, let's G and Y those and bring those in a bit, something like that. And you'll notice I'm having to fiddle around here because I've got proportional editing on. G and Y somewhere like there. I'm just going to keep, actually let's just G and Y, let's down the proportional editing size, bring those in enough that it's going to be okay. Somewhere around there. So you'll notice this looks much better in terms of the hand shape that we were trying to get. And if I just H to hide that, I think you'll agree that looks way better. I'm just going to bring that back. You can just find the lattice here. I just want to fiddle around with this bit here where the thumb is. So edit mode, Shift and Z to be able to see the vertices of the lattice. I probably want those. Let's try that. And then G and Y, and I can bring those out a bit, something like that. So it feels like that's going to allow the thumb to go into this joint. And we might have to move this around a little bit. So it's somewhere there, and then rotate R, and then R. I actually think this Oops, make sure it's on that one. R. I actually think this might be a little bit big for a thumb, but we'll have a look at it once we start adding things in. So something like that. So we've got our thumb there. If we wanted to, we could really come back in and totally redesign that part. Totally up to us. At this point, I'm going to leave it just because this is going to be a bit of a quick, sort of simple tutorial. Okay, now actually going back to this in the lattice, I think this does need to be a little bit wider here. So let's go into X-ray mode, select those, S and X, and we can scale those out a little bit if we need to, just so it looks like it's going to get to those fingers. Just have a quick check that everything looks about in the right place. Let's GY and bring that in a little bit. Proportional editing really down. There we go. Right, so let's finalize this bit. So I'm going to come back to here. Now, once we're happy with this, and we need to be happy with this, we can then fix the problem that we've got, which is at the moment, this is not a manifold object. Now, to be clear, I would normally do this last. I just wanted to remind that that's there as a problem. Then we can hide this, and then we can start changing around these fingers to be in whatever pose we want. So R. You could rig this. Might do a video on rigging actually. People have requested that. Hands are probably one of the things that I generally don't actually bother rigging too much, just because, well, you're probably going to have an open hand pose and a closed hand pose. I often find that it's just not really worth the time, but we could do something on rigging. Oh, got to remember to do it in the right order. So R, and then that, and that, and then R. And we've got something, and as soon as you start flexing the fingers around, it does seem to suddenly look a little bit more like a hand. R. And you'll see how important having that rotation point, the origin, being in the correct places. It just makes everything so much easier to do. So something like that, and we've got our hand looking about right. So let's get this thumb, so let's just R that. In actual fact, I think I want to move that down a little bit so we can see this joint. So there we go, a very basic gauntleted hand that we've got here. Obviously we can add a lot more in to smooth this out, but let's fix this final problem, which is we need to apply all of these, isolate this with /, and then all I'm going to do is go into edge mode, select that, and F. Now this is not going to be a flat object, but don't worry, we'll fix that in a second. Same here, Alt select that, F, and then object, and we're just going to add modifier, and we're going to triangulate, and we're going to just apply that. And you'll notice what that does is that has triangulated this bit at the top, so we're not going to have a problem with it not being flat. And then it would just be a matter of booleaning everything together, and we've got our gauntlet. So there we go, a very simple armored gauntlet as a basis for anything you'd want to do. For example, creating a hand holding some sort of customized weapon.